A trade deal with Europe, a new deadline for Russia, and sudden action on starvation in Gaza. Busy times for the president in Scotland. An attorney representing victims of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes has some advice for President Trump. Sign a transparency executive order. Delta Airlines data mining to set your ticket prices, artificial intelligence, and the consumer. Senator Ruben Gallego tells us he's not sold. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. Happy Monday. Europe, full of U.S. allies and trading partners, must grin and bear it. The 27-member European Union, under the threat of 50% tariffs from President Trump, buckled and accepted 15%, 9 times higher than last year. Now, the Europeans did win some carve-outs, some zero-tariff carve-out rates for things that America needs, specifically aircraft, machines that make computer chips, chemicals, and raw materials. Europeans hope that pharmaceuticals will be exempted similarly and that the 15% tariff rate on wine will also be somehow washed out. We don't know about that. Why? Because the details, as is always the case with Trumpian trade announcements, remain murky and possibly subject to change. But we do know this. There is trade peace between the United States and its largest trading partner. At what aggregate price? Who will pay it and for how long? That, my friends, is the great economic X factor of what remains of this summer and the fall and the winter. Another X factor for the president, duration unknown, the political fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein matter, which, no matter the many and varied attempts by the president to diminish it, distract from it, remains a persistent and potentially potent thorn in his side. We will discuss this case from the victim's perspective with an attorney who represents several victims who still await clarity on who is involved and who, if anyone, will be held to account legally. Also tonight, the president took action in Gaza that finally acknowledged 3 facts that have been true for weeks. Fact 1, food shortages were leading to starvation. Fact 2, Israel could do more to alleviate the plight. And fact 3, America's voice, once roused, would probably set new helpful actions in motion. We will dig deeper into the trade deal with the European Union with our good friend Kelly O'Grady, but we're going to begin tonight with Weijia Jiang, traveling with the president in Scotland. Weijia, it's so good to have you with us. It was a very busy few days there with the president. We will get to the trade deal in a second, but help our audience understand what the president said about Russia and the actions he suggested are in motion now in Gaza.
Well, Major, you know President Trump has been trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine for several months now. Even before he took office, he said it's something he wanted to do. And he has become increasingly frustrated with Vladimir Putin. And if there was any question about whether their honeymoon has ended, he made that clear today. He said, I don't even want to talk to Putin anymore because it's clear that he really doesn't want to do anything to work toward ending the conflict or negotiate a peace deal. Also, earlier this month, he said similar things and said that Putin would have 50 days to reach a peace agreement or face punishing secondary sanctions. And today he said he was moving that deadline up and that in 10 or 12 days, if Russia does not have some sort of an agreement, some sort of an off-ramp to the conflict, then he will impose those secondary sanctions, which would be in the form of secondary tariffs on other countries that continue to do business with Moscow, countries like China, Brazil, and India. And so he is making very clear, Major, that he has zero patience left for Vladimir Putin, and we are waiting for Putin's response. But previously, he has called similar thoughts theatrics, Major.
And what can you tell us about what the president said and possibly new actions in Gaza to alleviate the humanitarian crisis there?
Well, the president didn't explicitly disagree with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said that there was not starvation happening in Gaza, but he walked right up to the line and said, you can't make that up. And he said, just look at the children who are starving in Gaza. And he agreed that there needs to be more humanitarian aid, more points of entry allowed to get food and supplies into that area. But, Major, it's important to note that earlier this weekend, he also expressed frustration that he wasn't getting enough gratitude for the tens of millions of dollars he says the U.S. has already poured into the humanitarian effort. And he said no one has said thank you, which begs the question, who is supposed to say thank you? But he is coming around amid mounting pressure from world leaders. Of course, today he was with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who put on some of that pressure to do more.
And, Weege, before I let you go, how is the trade deal negotiated based on what we know? I think there are a lot of details yet to emerge between the United States and the European Union landing.
Well, it depends on who you ask, Major. Remember, the EU is made up of 27 countries, so it's no surprise that the response ranges from relief to the fact that it's not going to be the 30% tariff rate that Trump had threatened to kick in on Friday if a deal had not been reached, to very sharp criticism of the deal. The French said it is a dark day when the EU gave in to the USA. Hungary's prime minister went even further and said that Trump ate the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for breakfast. And that is because the EU is not retaliating against that 15% tariff rate that is going to be imposed. Even though it's not 15%, it's not nothing. And so those countries in particular, they want more concessions, as you mentioned. The French want their cosmetics and particularly their wine to have some sort of an exemption. Major.
Traveling with the President of Scotland, Weege James, thanks so much for starting us off with so much information. Really appreciate it. I want to turn now to Kelly O'Grady, who joins me from New York. Kelly, always great to see you, especially on a day like today when there's lots of action, lots of things we're going to be looking for as this week progresses. But what details have emerged from the trade deal? And for the Europeans, I guess the main consideration is what price economic peace?
Well, I think from, the European perspective, we should put it best. It's a 27-nation bloc. You're going to have people and countries that want different things, but it's a lot better than a full-blown trade war between these two countries. Now, the details, I think, that the U.S. would describe as a win, that $750 billion buying of energy, that commitment from the EU, as well as $600 billion invested in the U.S. We're not sure exactly where. And, for automakers, from the European Union's perspective, they got that 25% sector tariff moved down to 15%. If you're Mercedes, that's certainly better than it was. But definitely from the analysts and investors that I'm talking to, this was a win for American businesses and investment, American businesses that sell into the EU, but a loss for American businesses that are buying those European goods. And Major, you have to think, okay, well, if they're not able to absorb that full 15% tariff, what does that mean for you and me? And what does that mean to the inflation rate?
Foreign direct investment in our country, a huge driver of jobs and industry. So that's a big component part of this. I'm glad you mentioned that, Kelly. What else are we looking for as this week progresses economically?
Major, this is the economic Olympics week, okay? I hope I've been training hard enough. But look, this week we've got thank you. We'll see. The Federal Reserve interest rate decision. We've got the jobs report out on Friday. We have inflation data, the Fed's preferred gauge, on Thursday. And we also have a slew of company earnings. I'm talking Meta, Microsoft. These are big drivers of your 401k. So investors are they're happy with that EU trade deal, but they're bracing for what will come in this week ahead. I think that Friday jobs report is going to be very, very critical. Also happens to fall on the new tariff deadline on August 1st.
When it comes to economic analytical fitness, that's a hard thing to say on live television, but I got it out. It took me 2 efforts. No one can outshine Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, thank you so much. President Trump continues. Where are we, Guy? Oh, we're over here on number one. Number one. President Trump continues, you probably have noticed this, to be asked about his history with Jeffrey Epstein. Today, he offered his first explanation, at least in a while, why he broke ties with him.
For years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate. He hired help. And I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that worked for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata.
CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins me now. Scott, that wasn't the real big news today. Some of the more interesting news on this front was something filed by Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney before the United States Supreme Court.
Two very different types of appeals. A reply was filed with the Supreme Court as part of Maxwell's overall appeal. She wants to get her conviction overturned, but she's making a broader argument. It doesn't involve the case at all. She's making an appeal that though she was given a plea agreement in the Southern District of Florida, she was very much prosecuted and sent to prison in the Southern District of New York. And we have different districts in the same U.S. government doing different things with the same defendant, that there may need to be a Supreme Court review of that issue. Might do so. They might look at it. That's the legal appeal. The other appeal her lawyer's making is to President Trump, and it's not subtle at all, issuing a public statement today saying President Trump knows a good deal. He's a great deal maker, but also that he should recognize what the defense lawyer characterizes as the unjust treatment of Ghislaine Maxwell, clearly pushing for leniency, if not a pardon.
And in the context of having the Deputy Attorney General down in Tallahassee, meeting for 2 days last week with Ghislaine Maxwell, the way that was written enlarges the conversation about a possible pardon, which again, given the opportunity to do so today, the president did not categorically or even near categorically reject.
One legal analyst speaking with CBS News says any good defense attorney will take the opportunity to zealously argue for his or her client.
Nothing wrong with that. That's what they're supposed to do.
Especially when the moment's right and when the leverage is at its maximum. And obviously the timing here is noteworthy. This is a controversy the Trump administration can't shake. And all of a sudden, Ghislaine Maxwell is all over the place, meeting with the Deputy Attorney General, filing with the Supreme Court. Her defense lawyer issues a provocative statement. A leverage moment. Let's see what the president does about it, because he's not putting out that fire. He's been asked twice now in 5 days what he thinks about a pardon and doesn't declaratively answer, which almost guarantees, Major, the question will continue to be asked.
And he keeps saying, no one's brought it to my attention, almost suggesting, well, maybe somebody will, leaving that hanging in the air. Yeah. Scott MacFarlane, always, thank you so much. Here on number 2, thank you, Guy. Spencer Cooven joins me now. He represents several of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. Spencer, it's great to have you with us. I've seen a couple of interviews that you've done. For my audience, clarify what the president could do right now with an executive order to make what the Justice Department and possibly what the Treasury Department knows about records, transactions, phone logs, and the like more visible.
First of all, thank you for having me on, Major. You know, I've been representing victims of Jeffrey Epstein for now going on 20 years. I represented victim number 1 that came forward to the police here in Palm Beach County. And every single day, they have always said the information needs to get out. Everyone needs to know not just about Epstein and Maxwell, but everyone that was involved in all of this exploitation scandal that crossed the globe. The president, as I have said before, could enter an executive order today, sign an executive order demanding the release of these documents, do as he promised the American public that he would do. When he was on the campaign trail, when he got into office, he swore to the American public that he would release this information. Sign that executive order today. I dare you to do so. Because if he doesn't, he is either choosing not to do so for some unknown reason, or alternatively, he's admitting he doesn't have the power to do it. And I don't think he's going to admit to that.
It has been said, and you have said, that there's plenty of information within the files of the Justice Department. Ron Wyden, the senior Democrat on the Finance Committee, last week said there's lots of information also at the Treasury Department. Do you agree with that?
I do. There's a lot of financial information showing the financial transactions that went back and forth between the people that were helping to fund Epstein, as well as people that were involved in the scandals and in the trade for sex for money and minor victims. That information should come out as well. You have to remember that there were successful lawsuits that were prosecuted and resolved against major banks, international banking institutions that were part of this scandal. and that agreed and helped to fund Epstein's entire entourage, all of the flights, all of the paid sex for money, all of those things were financed. So let's see those records as well.
Spencer, there is a fair amount of criticism that comes in the direction of those of us in Washington who cover a scandal. We miss big things and overlook things that are central and have always been central. So I'm going to give you an avenue. Is there something that we're missing here in Washington that's central to this that we should focus on more than we have?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, because I do think that there is something that's very important to stress here, especially in the context of your previous conversation you just had. You know, there would be no Jeffrey Epstein if there weren't a Ghislaine Maxwell. That's important to understand on a fundamental level, because these young girls at 14 and 15 years old would have never approached an elderly white-haired man for a massage at his home or some type of sexual service. But when Ghislaine Maxwell came into the picture and she started talking to these girls with a beautiful British accent and well-dressed, well-mannered, you know, that is when a 15 or 14-year-old's guard goes down. This is another woman that's talking to them about this. So when they talk about giving a pardon to Ghislaine Maxwell, it absolutely makes me, just as an attorney on behalf of victims, and it just is nauseating. It is absolutely something that should never be considered. Subpoena Maxwell, bring her before Congress, and have her testify and open, under oath, testify to what she's done and who's involved.
Spencer, I talked to the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, last week, and he said we have to be very delicate about disclosures here. We have to protect the victims. And I want to go back to your first answer, because you said some of those you've represented for going on 20 years have always said, bring out this information. So help our audience contextualize this description from lawmakers, some of them sympathetic to the president. Well, we've got to be very, very careful about what comes out because we have to protect the victims. Is that legitimate? Is that something that the victims themselves, based on your interaction with them, represent for themselves as a necessary component going forward?
Listen, I've always advocated that minor victims should be protected because of their minority, because of their protected status. We absolutely can go through and redact the names of the minor victims. That is a simple task that can be done on a base level, or on videotapes that they have. They can blur the victims' faces if they're minors. But as far as the other individuals that were socializing and hanging out at Epstein's mansion in the Virgin Islands, here in Palm Beach or in Manhattan, there is absolutely no reason that those individuals should be protected at this time. You know, they bring up a point repeatedly that if there's not enough evidence to prosecute these people, that we shouldn't disclose who they are. That is absolutely false. These individuals were socializing with a known pedophile. This is a convicted felon that was going after young girls. Whoever was socializing with him, especially if it was after his conviction here in South Florida, they should be made to answer to the general public as to why they were with Epstein and what they were doing.
Spencer Kubin, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Still to come, churning data to set the price of your next airline ticket. Delta wants to expand its AI tools and sees revenue gains ahead. I will ask Arizona Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego why he calls this predatory.
We can save a lot of people. I mean, some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. I see it.
After weeks of warnings about the desperation in Gaza, the president, moved by TV images, changes his tone and some policy. And billions in tax cuts, Arctic drilling rights, clean energy incentives dismantled. How President Trump's big budget law fuels fossil fuels. Our newest Takeout takeaway is ahead. Welcome back to the Takeout. Lots of companies are using artificial intelligence. Delta has raised some eyebrows by announcing that it is using the churning of data through artificial intelligence to set prices. Now, there are lots of curiosities about that. Could it create a lower price structure? Could it create a higher price structure? What are the privacy concerns? All of this is circling around this airline and its use of artificial intelligence. Someone who wants to talk to me about that is Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego, Democrat from Arizona. Senator, why did you on social media call this out? What are you concerned about? And how would you even try to intervene to stop it?
Well, Major, and look, you could tell kind of by my dress right now that I'm a little informal because I'm actually on family leave. But the reason this is important to me is because I have seen potentially what this could happen. Right now, I have a beautiful son that was just born. He is 6 weeks old. We have family that are actually trying to find a way to come here, try to buy tickets. Now, imagine if you are a family member, your granddaughter has just been born, your grandson has just been born, and you start posting on Facebook. Delta is going to be able to use technology to actually skim that information. And when you go and try to buy a Delta ticket, they know that you're going to actually want very much to go see that grandchild of yours, and they're going to actually raise the price. So it's not a market price, it's a pressure price, one that is designed around the pressure points they think that you are willing to pay. That is not free market capitalism. That is absolute predatory nature that they're trying to actually execute on to increase profits. So that's why it's important that we step in, and we have a right as a federal government when it comes to regulating commerce, especially when this type of action supersedes what we understand as free market capitalism, straight to the fact that they're just literally trying to increase profits by trying, to be predatory against everyday citizens and consumers.
Senator, when Delta says, as it has, that it's only going to use aggregate data, not personal data, to create this pricing structure, you say what?
Why did you say that to the shareholders that you would? Right? If you're saying that to us, go say that to your shareholders. And by the way, your fiduciary duty is to be honest with your shareholders. You brag to your shareholders that there's going to be gross profits that come from this type of data. Right now, you're saying that's not the case. Then go back to your shareholders and amend your reports to do that. Because right now, what you're telling me is absolutely different from what you told your shareholders who are trying to decide the pricing of the stock right now. So someone somewhere along the chain of communications in Delta is lying at this point. So I'm sure you can do this in better ways that can find potential savings for consumers. But the nature of companies is to maximize profits. And unless we actually intervene and regulate to make sure that they're not able to use it to create gross profits on people's pressure points that are basically being gleaned from private data, they're going to at some point do it, whether it's them or some other company. And look, we're hearing like other examples of this. We heard grocery stores are looking at different types of pricing models that will essentially affect, how much they can charge you as you walk in. So the person that's walking 5 feet in front of you is going to have a different price than you. So as someone like me who grew up clipping coupons and stuff like that, I don't want to see that. The American consumer doesn't want to see that. And unless these companies actually get their stuff together, we're going to have to step in and do something about it.
Senator, it seems to me this is a much broader conversation because artificial intelligence, large language models are going to allow this data scraping to basically contextualize every consumer down to the behavioralist, lowest or most minute granular level. So they're going to know all sorts of things about their pressure points, their previous price history, and price according to that, not a price on the shelf, metaphorically, that everyone sees and pays the same.
That's right. Look, the laws of the market are largely governed by transparency, enough information flow for the consumer to make viable information about how to buy versus not to buy, and competition, right? And of course, that being the base of supply and demand. But when the producers have more information to actually make information about, or gather information enough to actually set the price point versus the consumer, but the consumer doesn't have as much information to actually weigh that option, then it's an uneven market, and it's not a free market at that point. It's a predatory market. And so we wouldn't allow that in many other cases, and we certainly shouldn't be allowing it when it comes to whether it's airline tickets or, for example, when it comes to the pricing at grocery stores.
You and other Democrats have been pushing for release of Epstein-related material. You're adept at understanding politics and legislation. Game this out for me the next 3 or 4 weeks, or when everyone gets back in September.
Well, look, the problem here is that this theater, this political situation, was started by Donald Trump and some of his allies prior to him even being elected to office, running on it for 8 years, and then even while getting into office, promising that they were going to release these files. And so the American public was asking for this, they voted for this, and then all of a sudden, we're all supposed to just look away when the president says there's nothing to see here, stop asking questions, you're a fool if you're asking questions. So President Trump and his allies have to answer. Were you lying to us for the last 8 to 10 years, claiming that there was this mass conspiracy in order to protect, these elite pedophiles? Or are you trying to protect yourself? Are you trying to protect, your friends? And there's certainly ways for us to get this information out where it protects these victims while at the same time allows us to understand what was happening there. But clearly, there is a cover-up happening. And it's not just the Democrats are demanding this. This is obviously it's a pressure point that's happening among Republicans because at the core, they've been lying to them for so long, and now they want answers. And so they can't just continue running away from this. Time is not going to get away. It's not going to help them. When you've been lying for 8 years about this or talking about this for 8 to 10 years about this, 2 weeks of trying to distract with other media issues is not going to shake that. So the best way to do this is just be transparent, open up the books, open up the files, which I've been trying to get them to do on the House floor, and let the chips lie where they may.
Very, very quickly. Iowa, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, they're either on or have been on your travel schedule. You were just elected senator from Arizona. Are you already launching your presidential campaign?
Well, listen, Arizona is the swingiest swing states of all those states. So, first of all, no one talks about the fact that I move all over Arizona a gazillion times. But look, I'm here because of one problem. Right now, the Republicans have destroyed Medicaid. There are going to be millions of Arizonans and Americans, hundreds of thousands of Arizonans, millions of Americans are going to lose Medicaid so we could, pay for the tax cuts for the richest. You have food stamps, that are going to be cut for people that are really needy, as, by the way, grocery prices are still rising, again, for the richest of this country. And the Republicans that voted for this are in Iowa, are in New Hampshire, and are in Pennsylvania and other parts of the country. So I will continue to travel because I need allies. In New Hampshire, I got Chris Pappas, someone that I've known since college, a great congressman also who's now running for U.S. Senate, and we got to make sure that we protect that vote. We get someone else in there that understands everyday working family. He runs the oldest restaurant in New Hampshire. He understands the pain point of his customers, of his voters, and I want him in the Senate to make sure that he's there to fight with me, to make sure that we're fighting to bring costs down and make life more affordable for every American every day, and that's why I'm going to be going to New Hampshire.
Arizona Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego, the first person on the Takeout reimagined to beat me at the casual sartorial game. Well done, Senator. We'll see you next time. As humanitarian conditions in Gaza continue to deteriorate, the president says he will send those who are now starving something approximating a lifeline. The latest from the region next here on the Takeout. Back to the Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Here is a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. Overnight, Poland and NATO scrambled fighter jets to protect Polish airspace during a massive Russian drone and missile attack on Ukraine. NATO's newest member nation, Sweden, launched fighter jet patrols to join Polish aircraft. Also, German Patriot missile defense systems were mobilized. No U.S. aircraft took part. The Air Force will soon begin the costly and highly technical transformation of a Qatari 747 into President Trump's newest Air Force One. How much it will cost? Well, that's classified. But a recent Pentagon transfer of $934 million to a classified account has drawn considerable attention. The New York Times disclosed that pretty hard-to-find budget handiwork and noted that this will take 2 years, maybe more, to make the Qatari gift to the president airworthy for his travel needs. President Trump says his administration will set up food centers to fight growing instances of starvation in Gaza. He spoke about it during his meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer earlier today.
It's a terrible situation. The whole thing is terrible. It's been bad for many years. But it's great to hear you feel the same way that I do. We have to help on a humanitarian basis before we do anything. We have to get the kids fed.
Our Liz Palmer has the latest on how Israel is now allowing more aid in as international pressure mounts.
The reversal in Israel's policy came over the weekend, and it boils down to making it easier for more aid to move into Gaza. The shift came after images of hungry Gazans and malnourished children shocked the world and prompted an international outcry. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denied that there was starvation in Gaza. President Trump was asked about those comments, and here's what he said.
I mean, based on television, I would say not particularly, because those children look very hungry.
Today, more aid trucks are on the move as international agencies gear up to feed the hungry and, by now, the desperate. There have been airdrops, too. Yesterday, Israel, Jordan, and the UAE all parachuted pallets of aid into the ruins of Gaza. It sure makes for dramatic pictures, but it's expensive and it's actually not very efficient. The bulk of the aid will have to come in by truck. Each one can carry roughly between 4 and 10 times as much as a parachute. A trickle of aid did make it in last week, but Gazans were so hungry they looted the convoys, in this case, bags of flour. The aid agencies have a grim new term for that, self-distribution, and it's bound to continue until everyone is fed and there is plenty more food available. That's going to take time and the right conditions. The Israeli military announced it will secure safe routes for aid trucks to deliver their loads, and that is something the UN agencies have been asking for some time. If they can make it work, it really could make all the difference. Back to you.
Our thanks to Liz Palmer, very, very much. Former North Carolina Democratic Governor Roy Cooper launches his bid for a seat in the United States Senate. A look at the battleground showdown, expected to be one of the most competitive and expensive and high profile in the 2026 midterms. More on that and much more in the political space here on The Takeout when we come back. Welcome back. Former Democratic Governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, well, he jumped into the race to succeed Republican Tom Tillis in the Senate. Here's how he put part of it in his pitch today.
These are not ordinary times. Politicians in D.C. are running up our debt, ripping away our health care, disrespecting our veterans, cutting health for the poor, and even putting Medicare and Social Security at risk just to give tax breaks to billionaires. That's wrong, and I've had enough.
I've had enough. I'm going to guess we're going to hear more than one Democrat say that between now and November of 2026. Here with me now at the family table, staff writer for The Atlantic, Tolu Olorunipa, and the Associated Press political reporter, Matt Brown. Great to have you both with us. Thanks so much, Tolu. Assess for my audience North Carolina, this race, and Roy Cooper got a chance?
Well, it's a state that has been very difficult for Democrats to be successful in for years.
Trump is 3-0 there.
Yes, and even before that, Mitt Romney won back in 2012. 2008 was the last presidential race in which a Democrat won. But during that stretch, more than 15 years of hard times for Democrats at the presidential level, Roy Cooper has shown some success at the gubernatorial level, and he is the prime pick that Democrats wanted to run in the Senate race. He's proven himself as a key kind of person that can tailor his message to his voters. They have already voted for him, even in years where Republicans were otherwise successful. And so he does have that sort of North Carolina tailored message, and Democrats are thrilled that he's running in this race.
Matt, I want to show you something that popped up this afternoon. It's what we call in the biz the stinger at the end of a political ad. It's meant to give you the message or the key message for that ad. It's for Mike Collins in Georgia. He's running for the Senate against John Ossoff. Now, I'm not a copy editor. I used to work with him back when I was a self-respecting print reporter, for goodness sake. But I don't believe that's how you spell Georgia.
No,
I'm right about that.
As a son of Georgia, I have to say, no, that's not how we spell it down there, and not how we spell it in D.C. either. And I'm sure that Mike Collins' team has been told by NRCC and Republicans here that this is the operation that they need if he's going to be the challenger to John Ossoff down in Georgia. Republicans are still reeling and very frustrated here in D.C. because they did not successfully win certain races in the 2022 midterms, for instance. And they had more success in 2024 with a lot of their candidates, and that's why they regained the chamber. So they're very focused on candidate selection, candidate quality all across the country right now, especially if the headwinds are going to be in the Democrats' favor come 2026.
In these kind of confusing social media times, it's always worth asking, was that a troll? just to get you and me and everybody else paying closer attention than we otherwise would have? That stinger just would have gone away if it was spelled correctly? I don't know.
Collins is a prolific X user, so he's on it all the time. He knows how to use it. Way in the culture. I don't know if he intended for that to be a particular troll, but he does know how to troll. The man is a poster. So.
He's a poster. He may be a poster child for copy editing now in this race, but we'll see. Toulouse, Marco Rubio was on with Laura Trump over the weekend and said, do we have the soundbite? We do? Play it. About J.D. Vance.
Outside of the State Department. Well,
I think J.D. Vance would be a great nominee. and if, I think if he decides he wants to do that. And so, I think he's doing a great job as vice president. He's a close friend, and I hope he intends to do it. I know it's kind of early.
Oh, it's kind of early, and they're so friendly about it. We'll see if that lasts, Toulouse.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really any other answer you can give.
Right, not right now.
With a young, ambitious vice president who's looking for the future, looking to become potentially the nominee in 2028. If you want to be seen as loyal within the Trump world, which is the coin of the realm in Trump MAGA world, you can't be seen as, trying to be too ambitious and trying to overstep your boundaries and potentially getting in front of the heir apparent to the MAGA dynasty, which right now seems to be J.D. Vance, because he has the support of Donald Trump's son, and he has been in the right side of Donald Trump for the last 6 months that they've been working together. And so Marco Rubio has no other answer but to say, I support J.D. Vance. Now, if he decides not to run, then all bets are off.
Right. But it illuminates this post-Trump MAGA question. And it's not resolved. Right now, J.D. has the sort of patina of the heir apparent, but that's not settled. And Rubio knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to know.
And he has ambitions, too.
Everybody has ambitions in politics. That's very much the case. None less than the Secretary of State and the Vice President, obviously. Right. These are the two men who, when you really look at the MAGA coalition right now, that they seem like the likeliest candidates who'd be able to pull together the entire Trump coalition here. A lot of the, religious conservatives, secular frat bros, the tech right, all of these different, wings of Trumpism are really only united under President Trump right now. But you could imagine a Vice President Vance or potentially Secretary of State Rubio being able to be the candidate who can pull all of those different veins together. Now, when you look at the competition between these two men, I mean, Rubio's already lost a race to become vice president before. So he knows that he has to play his cards absolutely perfectly here over the next couple years to, win the loyalty of the base, win the loyalty of this coalition, if he's going to stand any chance come 2028.
He has less latitude for error than J.D. Vance does, at least for the moment. Matt Brown, Toulouse Olorunipa, thank you so much. Great to have you with us. Back over to number 2, guy says to me, President Trump's trade deal means the EU will plunk down, yeah, that's it, plunk down $750 billion for U.S. energy. What this and the budget law may mean for your bottom line when it comes to utility bills. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to the Conversation Corner. The European Union said it will purchase $750 billion of U.S. energy under this new trade deal negotiated with President Trump. Mike Summers joins me now. He is the president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, the largest U.S. trade association for oil and natural gas. Good to have you here.
Great to be with you, Major.
So, Mike, as I understand this is a thing that I've seen the Europeans say is actually fine because it's part of a transition that's probably too long in the making from Russian gas sources to liquefied natural gas from the United States. That's what this is principally about, right?
That's exactly right. And this is a very big deal. If you think about the fact that they currently import about $125 billion of energy products right now, this is about doubling the amount that they're going to be doing every single year throughout the rest of the president's term. So it's a very big deal.
Will this create any supply crunch here domestically? Because liquefied natural gas is not infinite, and some utilities in this country use it for electricity production. Are you going to have a crunch here?
I don't think we will. we have almost an infinite supply of natural gas here in the United States. This is all about whether or not we can access those resources. And that's one of the reasons why the important aspects of the One Big Beautiful Bill have really been underestimated. The access that we're now granted to the Gulf of America, to the state of Alaska, to federal acreage onshore, really is going to allow us to find resources that we haven't been able to find before.
But you know, and I know, because I have friends in the business, that's costly, it's time consuming, it's not going to happen overnight. That exploration and bringing that up, 3 to 5 years.
Well, for natural gas in particular, we have the access to those resources right now. The real big problem that we have is getting those resources from where they are to where they need to be, which is why the next big step that Congress has to take is to get a big infrastructure permitting bill done so that we can access those resources, first of all, which we currently do have access to, and then move them via pipeline from places like Pennsylvania, places like Texas, places like North Dakota, and to the places where we actually need those resources.
Now, I've heard you and others in the energy sphere talk for a long time about all of the above. The big, beautiful law isn't all of the above. It is hostile to green energy, tax credits and subsidies, and fitting with a long-established historical pattern, which has paid off economically for this country to expedite and incentivize fossil fuel exploration and development. Like I said, there have been tremendous economic gains for that, environmental costs, yes, but why now are we sort of collectively walking back from the all of the above?
Well, the one thing that we know is that we're going to need a lot more energy in this country. In fact, I was just talking to one of our
hyperscalers and the data centers need it, and it's not all going to come from your industry.
It's not. And in fact, we're going to need every single gigawatt that we can produce. In fact, I was just talking to one hyperscaler this week, and it wasn't a question of what the demand is going to be in the future. What they told me was what they're going to need going forward is every single gigawatt of energy that the United States can produce. We're going to need it all. We're going to need wind, we're going to need solar, but we're also going to need a lot of oil and gas going forward.
And they're going to need it 24/7, which is unlike residential consumers. Even most businesses don't need it 24/7 rather, excuse me. Data centers, hyperscalers will. And that's going to create, it seems to me, a competition for something that is currently finite and costly.
Here's the truth of the matter. If you need something 24/7, you're going to need a heck of a lot of natural gas going forward. And that's why natural gas really isn't just a bridge fuel. It is the future fuel that America is going to need. It is going to power the future and help us win the race for artificial intelligence. But if the demand is there, I know that the United States is going to be able to continue to produce the natural gas and the oil that it's going to be required to provide those energy needs.
Talk to me about employment in the industry, because I went back to a table I saw today. 215, about 630,000 in the industry. 2024, 380,000. Artificial intelligence, better, efficient manufacturing and extraction means more supply, but fewer actually employed doing that work. And that trend line, I'm told and have read, is going to continue.
So I think the next big revolution in the American energy industry is going to be brought to us by artificial intelligence. If you think about the fact that we're currently leaving about 80% of the resource in the ground, how are we going to find or get the rest of that resource out of the ground? It's going to be artificial intelligence, which is going to help us find the substructure in the United States that we currently don't have access to. Artificial intelligence is going to be the answer for how we're going to get more of these resources and power the future that we know is going to be required.
But not necessarily more jobs.
Well, we think ultimately there are going to be more jobs that are provided because we're going to be finding more of those resources over time.
Mike Summers, CEO, American Petroleum Institute. I appreciate the perspective. That does it for today. Please stick around. Daily Report coming up next. What is this called again? Oh, yeah, I remember. CBS News 24/7.